What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Sarutobi wiped his brow. Less than 9 hours had passed since Konoha was attacked by the Kyuubi no Kitsune, a massive beast capable of leveling mountains with one tail. It had finally been defeated, but not without heavy losses. 756 casualties, 239 of them civilians who got caught in the fox's attacks or were trampled in the panic. Coupled with damage to the village itself and the surrounding area, it'll be almost a decade before we're back up to full strength. The aging Kage glanced over to the small bundle on his desk. Inside lay a newborn baby girl, Minato and Kushina's daughter, Naruko Namikaze. Not to mention Minato and Kushina. I'm sorry little one. He gently brushed aside the lock of reddish gold hair from the sleeping infant's face. Both of them had sacrificed their lives to seal the Kyuubi away into the child to defeat it, leaving 3 whisker-like lines on each cheek. Unfortunately, a shinobi who witnessed the event immediately tried to stab it, calling out for the baby to die so the fox would be destroyed, a shinobi Sarutobi personally beheaded. However, it was too late as word quickly spread to the civilians who started demanding the baby's death as well, some going as far as claiming it was the Kyuubi in human form. Since then, there had already been 4 attempts on the baby's life by shinobi and civilian. Thankfully, the Anbu looking after her was able to intercept them. "Kami, give me strength," he muttered. His old friend, Danzo's demands for the child to put under his care wasn't helping things. There was no way in hell he'd let that warhawk get his claws into her, but right now he was more worried about other things, namely what the council might try if they learned of her rather unique heritage, namely on Kushina's side. Minato and Kushina would be disgusted with the lot. "You're preaching to the choir, sensei." A voice spoke up behind him. Sarutobi turned to find one of his old students, the current Toad Sage, Jiraiya, Minato's sensei and Naruto's godfather. "Been wondering when you'd pop up. Sorry, I got caught up paying my respects to the 2 Gakkis." The dry lines on his face showed he had been crying. "So, that's Lil Naru-chan, huh?" he asked, getting a brief nod in reply. "Hey, she favors the both of them a lot." The smile on his face faded as abruptly as it had appeared. "What are we going to do?" "It's too dangerous to take her with me to maintain my spy network, you know that. Especially if he finds out. I don't know if they're still carrying their grudge or if they'd be willing to shift it to Minato's next of kin, but personally, I'd rather not find out. Hi. For now you and I are the only ones who know the truth about Naruko. The council'd call for her execution even worse or try and set her up as a breeder. Not to mention what some of the narrow-minded would try." The younger man quickly stepped back from the sudden burst of ki he Hokage let out. "I'll be damned if I let that happen to their daughter and legacy. It pains me to do this, but, Jiraiya, do you still remember the chameleon seal?" "Of course I do. Wait a second. What the heck are you suggesting, sensei?" "It's our only option right now, Jiraiya. I want this even less than you do, but for now, Naruko Namikaze must disappear." Thankfully, none of them were able to really get a good look at her face. "These, if anyone asks, his name is Naruto Uzumaki, an orphan from the attack." The Toad Sage sighed. "All right. I just know they're gonna want to beat the tar out of me when my time comes, but as long as she's safe, I guess I can deal with it." Taking out his writing supplies, he motioned for Sarutobi to pick the girl up. "Where do you want me to put it?" And with a few strokes of a brush and some applied chakra, the 4th's daughter temporarily vanished from Konoha's history. "What possessed you to put 3 blow-up dolls in Hiyashi Hyuga's bedroom, Naruto?" Iruka Amino muttered as he dragged the 13-year-old blonde back to the academy after the boy had led a group of Konoha shinobi on an hour-long chase through the village due to his latest prank. "For that matter, how in the hell did you even get in there? You've seen how uptight that guy is. Just figured a little tail would help him ease up, even if it's plastic." Naruto cackled when the Hyuga head's scream of "Na-ani" had ripped across town after the discovery. "As for how, you know they're not allowed to use those eyes of theirs inside their house unless it's an emergency. Plus a lot of them are too full of themselves to think anyone would try and sneak around in their house." Iruka sighed, "And this is why Hiyashi can't stand you being around his daughter." Naruto rolled his eyes. While he and the Hyuga clan head didn't have any real animosity for each other, He never missed a chance to drive him nuts. Or any of the other clan heads for that matter. Shikaku Naru still hadn't forgiven him for swapping out his coffee with espresso. The Nara clan head couldn't sit still for 2 days from that. Though his wife, Yoshino, was more than happy to keep the man occupied. Hiyashi mainly ranted about the possibility of him corrupting Hinata. Naruto just snorted as the two entered the classroom. Inside, the other students were already seated, though a few were quick to give him death glares. He took a quick note of who was there. In the corner sat Sasuke Uchiha, the only known survivor of the infamous Uchiha massacre, sitting in his trademark, brooding, position. He'd never really associated with the boy, mainly due to his antisocial personality. That, and all the fawning a good portion of the village did on him made Naruto's stomach turn. The horde of rather rabid fangirls he had didn't help matters. Beside him, and apparently trying to focus on him and Iruka at the same time, was the one person he truly couldn't tolerate in the class, Sakura Haruno. Self-proclaimed president of the Sasuke fan club and one of its more extreme members, she was known for trying to pummel or scream at anyone that said and or did anything she felt was negative toward the object of her if his reactions were anything to go by, very unwanted affections. As usual, Shikamaru Nara was snoozing while Choji Akamichi was snacking, much to Iruka's ire. He didn't really have any problem with those two aside from Shika's constant referral to him as the troublesome blonde. Beside them sat Ino Yamanaka. Like Shikamaru and Shijoji, he didn't really have any significant problems with her, though she was a fangirl like Sakura. Thankfully, she wasn't as fanatical, just pushy. Kiba Inuzuka, on the other hand, seemed hell-bent on giving him grief ever since the two met, griping about how he thought Naruto smelled funny even after a shower, using that as a reason to be less than civil to him. Akamaru, the boy's dog, simply gave the blonde a wide berth. In the back sat Shino Aburame. Unlike Kiba, he and his clan considered him something of a puzzle. His insects also felt something off about the boy, but it made them curious. Naruto had caught more than one of their bugs trying to explore on him. It tended to itch, but nothing really malicious. Reaching the far end, Naruto couldn't help but grin at who the last empty seat was beside, Mornin, Hina-chan. He whispered, sliding in beside her, getting a slightly surprised squeak and a book closing abruptly under the table. Naruto-kun, don't do that, the now blushing girl responded. I thought Iruka-sensei caught me reading again. He glanced into her lap and caught sight of a familiar orange book, Icha-Icha? I thought you had finished that one. I did. But that doesn't mean I can't read it again. Besides, the next one hasn't came yet. Oh, you mean, this one? Naruto opened his jacket as discreetly as possible and let a dark red book cover peek out. Just got it from Sanin yesterday. Won't be officially out for another month. Elsewhere, said Sanin was conducting research when he looked up. Why'd I suddenly have the feeling I should be proud of the Gaki right now? Pervert. Clunk. Though, the feeling lasted about 11 seconds before he was crowned with a bath stone after one of the bathing ladies heard him. Naruto snickered at the sparkly expression on his friend's face. You'll get it after school, okay? He almost rolled his eyes at Hiyashi's paranoia again, him corrupting her? More like the other way around. Yes, around her clan, and some of the nosier members of the village. Hinata Hyuga was shy, quiet, and a little bit of a wallflower. Add a certain orange-clad blonde to the picture, and Hinata was still shy and quiet at times, but she'd reveal one fact people didn't and or refused to know about her. Next to Jiraiya, Hinata Hyuga was quite possibly the biggest pervert in Konoha. The duo had known each other for 6 years, ever since meeting during the first few days of the academy. Back then she tried to literally hide inside that jacket of hers. Thankfully, with a little encouragement, and learning she was a big fan of the Icha-Icha series, he managed to at least ease her out of the shyness to where it wasn't crippling. What he didn't expect was the crush she had developed for him. He still remembered the time he had caught her staring at him with her Byakugan on, blushing up a storm. At first he was worried she was going to freak out until he saw the twin trails of red out of her nose and rather lecherous grin. I hope it won't be all I'll be getting. She purred, scooting a little closer to the blonde. Maybe, if you're a good girl. He replied, earning a cute little pout. Granted, they knew they'd have to wait a little longer before doing anything major, but that didn't mean the occasional heavy makeout session wasn't an option. That's no fun, she whined. Naruto, Hinata, anything you'd like to share? Iruka's half amused, half annoyed voice rang out, causing most of the class to look their way. Nothing, Iruka-sensei, they said in unison. The Chunin knew they had been slightly preoccupied, but decided he'd be merciful and turned back to the textbook on his desk. Where were we? Jutsu rankings. We were at C's, I believe? Tachiza Musho was never really an exceptional shinobi. The son of a pair of tea house owners, below average grades, mediocre skills. Even he wasn't too sure if he'd get past Chunin. Especially after the Kyuubi attack. An explosion during it had sent shrapnel into his side and leg. They had managed to patch him up, but the injury had left him with a limp, effectively ending his career and leaving him bitter. He turned to alcohol, but it did little except make his attitude even fouler. It wasn't long before he heard about how the demon had been beaten from one of the few lucky enough to survive the Hokage's fury when they tried to finish killing the beast. It had been sealed away in a baby, and like them, he felt it was insanity leaving it alive when the old man had the chance. Unfortunately, none of them had gotten a real good look at the kid. All they could say was it had 3 lines on each cheek. The same as the Uzumaki kid. Then it hit him. He had the fox, or as far as Tachi was concerned, thanks to a few years of booze and listening to the people who believed Naruto had to die, he was the fox. Kyuubi, the creature that had cost him his job, his home, was walking the same streets as he was, mocking him with its continued existence. And all because of a stupid old fart who wouldn't believe the truth. Some people thought it'd been the alcoholism, others claimed he had just snapped and wanted it targeted. Either way, that day several would be wondering just what made the drunk attack Naruto Uzumaki when he was leaving the academy. Between the loud ringing in his ears and his head feeling like an explosive tag had gone off inside it, Naruto was surprised he could stand up somewhat. What hit me? Seriously, what the hell hit me? Okay Naruto, think. After class was over, Hinata-chan dragged me off to a spot to read the book in private. We found a corner near Ichiraku's. Now I remember, we were about to start the book when somebody yelled behind me and I got cracked in the head with something. Trying his best to clear the cobwebs, he noticed something was off. Very off. The ramen stand, Hinata, even the damn street, everything was gone. In their place was a large circular room, almost as big around as the Hokage Tower. It was sparsely decorated, a couple of banners hung from the walls, one sporting his trademark spiral emblem. Along with them were a handful of tables randomly placed with a few books and odds and ends on them. Several pillows, some large enough to sit in, lay scattered across the floor. All in all, it seemed comfortable. However, that wasn't what really caught his attention. It was the girl sitting in the middle of the room. The almost girl sitting in the middle of the room to be precise. Granted, Naruto'd seen stuff like that already thanks to the illustrations in Icha Icha. Having one actually in front of him was a whole other plate of sushi. Doing his best to wipe away the trickle of blood from his nose, he edged over to her, wondering why she hadn't said anything. She was pretty cute though, looking to be about 17 or 18. Full-figured, too. Waist-length emerald green hair, a light tan that showed she liked being outside, borderline DDS clad in a strip of cloth wrapped around her, a tummy with a bit of pudge but still Y and plenty of curves in the right places. Now, while he and Hinata were what most could consider an item, that didn't mean they wouldn't ask each other if another girl was hot. A couple of times the pale-eyed girl had even asked if she could pick the girl if they ever decided to try a threesome, lucky son of a bitch. So he didn't have to worry as his eyes drifted down to a pair of long, shapely legs connected to a pert little backside. A loincloth gave her some modesty. However, there were 3 unusual things about his unknown companion. First was her face. Not her appearance. Mind you, dark amber eyes, a button nose and cute pouty pink lips. It was her expression. She had none. Both eyes were staring straight ahead with a glassy look to them. The whole time he looked at her, they didn't blink once. The second thing was the fact she was chained to the floor. Heavy shackles were on her ankles and attached straight to the floor, keeping her on her knees. A chain was looped around her waist and hooked to the floor as well before running up to a heavy collar around her neck. Both arms were manacled behind her back with more chain linking them to the collar. Between her S rested a piece of metal. Engraved on it was the same seal he had on his stomach ever since he could remember. Finally, and the oddest part, was the fact she had fox ears and tails. Just above the rounding of her butt protruded 9 fox tails, each one looking to be almost as tall as her and anchored to the floor with the same heavy shackles, and 2 large fox ears protruded from the top of her head the same color as her eyes and tipped with silver. He waved a hand in her face. "Hello? Anyone there?" Snapping his fingers got no response. Not even a light tweak of her nose got her to react. What the hell is going on here? "She's still under the genjutsu, you're going to have to break it before she'll respond." A voice spoke up almost right behind him. "Gah!" Naruto yelped, leaping a good 5 feet up before whirling around to yell at whoever did that. He just didn't expect it to be 2 people he had been told were dead. One was a tall man with spiky blonde hair like his own. Beside him was a woman with fiery red hair. Both were dressed in Junin uniforms, but the man also had on a Hokage robe. Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage, and Kushina Uzumaki, the Crimson Princess. What the? Before he could continue, he found himself in a rather fierce hug courtesy of the redhead. "Oh honey, you've grown up so much." She squealed. "The heck? What in the world are you talking about?" Naruto managed to call out from his position. "You honestly don't think I wouldn't recognize my own baby girl now, would you? Even with that stupid seal Sarutobi and Jiraiya put on you." "Whoa whoa whoa," Naruto hollered, finally squirming away from the woman. "In case you haven't noticed, I'm a boy." "A boy?" Minato spoke up before a look of realization and annoyance took over. "Those bakas. They never told her." "Nani? Minato, are you saying those 2 let our daughter go this long in that disguise without even letting her know?" Finally losing his patience, Naruto let out a piercing whistle, getting their attention again. "All right. As cool as it is to meet you two, why the hell are you insisting on calling me a girl? And for that matter, how in Kami's name are you two here? Everything thinks you died in the Kyuubi attack 13 years ago. And what the blazes is here?" "Yeah, hey. I guess an explanation would be in order." Minato replied, adding, "Jiraiya and Hiruzen are so dead if I ever catch them." "Sweetie. To put it bluntly, this is your mind. You're here 'cause a drunk decided you were the Kyuubi and attacked you. You've been unconscious since this afternoon." "Not another one," he groaned. While the majority of Konoha didn't seem to have a real problem with him outside of prank victims, there were still a few that reacted as if he were evil incarnate. More that once they had attacked him, screaming out bullshit like, "They'll be avenged, monster." Fortunately, they were usually intercepted by Anbu before getting in more than a hit or too drunk to see straight. He usually considered them just a pain in the ass. "People do stupid things, Naru-chan," Kushina said, though this brings us to the next thing. It's claimed that we killed the Kyuubi, far from it. There's no way for a mortal to really kill a Biju, so we used the only method possible. We had to seal the fox away, into our only child. Naruto's eyes widened. Wait. What the hell are you saying? He quickly looked over at the shackled girl. "She's right in one, kiddo." Minato added as a full-size mirror appeared in front of Naruto. "The trush is, during the attack, we noticed she had the same expression then as well, indicating a potent genjutsu had been put on her. Unfortunately, we couldn't get close enough to try and break her out of it, so we're forced to perform a sealing, to stop Konoha's destruction and save her, since we knew she wasn't a willing participant. We couldn't bring ourselves to use someone else's child, and anyone older than a few months wouldn't be able to handle the influx of foreign chakra. Our only option was to use our own daughter, you." The blonde went dead silent as he saw his reflection. It still had his orange jumpsuit and the familiar whisker marks, but the person wearing it was completely different. A girl with reddish blonde hair that had 2 pigtails down to her lower back. Even with the jumpsuit as baggy as it was easy to tell she was quite shapely. "Your real name is Naruko Namikaze, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and the last living member of the Succubi clan." Wait. Naruto fought the growing weakness in his legs. "Naruko. A Namikaze. Succubus." He gave the two a semi-glare. "How am I supposed to know this isn't some twisted form of payback for one of my pranks? The 3 of you could be actors." The 2 adults glanced at each other and Minato sat down nearby. "Naruko, when we performed the sealing, we ended up having to rush it. Because of that, Partis was pulled into the seal along with Kyuubi. We've seen just about everything over the years. The times you and Jiraiya met up and talked, mostly about random things. Like when you two mused on in the Harunos were natural pinks. Kushina faked a retching noise at that. Yeah, Shina-chan had the misfortune of discovering that they, in fact, are. Naruto faltered slightly. That was just a random chat he hadn't bothered telling anyone about. Though we wish he could have waited a little longer before showing you Icha. And how annoyed you've been getting with the Inuzuka boy. Granted, they have a tendency to be wary of something when their nose tells them. But I suggest a rolled up newspaper next time he gets in your face. Especially if he calls you an it. Minato. Kushina rolled her eyes. Hey, it worked on Sum's jerk brother when he tried to feel you up that time. Well, yeah, considering you had the paper wrapped around a bakken. She responded, pretending not to hear Naruto snickering at that. I stand by the fact it still worked. He said before turning his attention back to the younger blonde, and there's the fact you put 2 of those blow-up dolls in a 69 position on Hiyoshi's bed and the 3rd spread eagle on his desk. I would have loved to see the look on his face. He grinned before getting elbowed by Kushina. Naruto's laughter died immediately. How'd you? But most importantly, we've seen the times you've sat on my monument's head wondering what your parents were like before they died. Wondering if they had died fighting the fox or if they had just been unlucky and got caught in the crossfire. Plus your annoyance at Sarutobi for saying he can tell you yet. Naruto's legs finally lost the battle with gravity and he dropped to the floor. This really isn't a joke, is it? He looked at both of them, Mom, Dad. It's us, honey, or part of the real Minato and Kushina, at least. The redhead replied. The next few seconds passed by in silence before they were bowled over as the blonde tackled them, holding onto them like his life depended on it. Kami, this is still kinda unreal. Naruto said, once he managed to settle down after the revelation. I got a piece of my parents inside my head. Wait, if this part is real, the rest. Kushina grinned and pulled off the vest. Tossing it aside, she closed her eyes and flexed slightly. Suddenly the back of her shirt ripped apart as 2 large leathery wings emerged from between her shoulder blades, along with a long whip-like tail with an arrow-shaped tip. Her pupils shifted to vertical slits and 2 pointed fangs poked out from her lips that had gotten slightly fuller and turned a few deeper shades of red. She held up a hand to show the nails change into sharp, inch-long claws. Her bust noticeably enlarged, if the strain her shirt was now under was any indication, along with her curves becoming more prominent and her legs lengthening a bit, giving her a couple more inches in height. Like I said, before you were born, I was the last member of a clan that originated from Whirlpool before it was destroyed. The succubi. She looked over and sighed in exasperation at her husband, who was pinching his nose tightly. Minato. I can't help it. You know what the real you does to me. He muttered in his defense. Yeah, but could you not do that in front of our daughter? Kushina replied before continuing, unfortunately, because of a few of our abilities, those of us that survived the attack ended up being hunted to be turned into pets or forced soldiers for some of the shinobi villages. I was lucky enough to get to Konoha when I was still little, before my powers showed up. Thankfully, Sarutobi and his wife were willing to take me until I was old enough. Whoa, Naruto could only stare at her transformation, at least until he caught that one world. And why do you keep calling me a girl? I am a boy. Here, it'd probably be easier if you saw it for yourself. Minato got up and started looking around, moving pillows and tables aside, scouring every inch he could. After the attack, Sarutobi had Jiraiya put the chameleon seal on you, something originally developed during the Second Shinobi War to hide possible assassination or kidnapping targets. It was effective, but not flawless. He crouched down near the walls and checked the corner. Its biggest drawback was that it was extremely fragile. Any form of damage to the seal would destroy it. He chuckled and motioned for them to come over, and here's the little bugger right here. He pointed to a plate-sized seal drawn on one of the floor tiles against the wall. Why those two didn't even bother tell you about it, I don't know why. Doesn't seem all that impressive. Naruto muttered, is this really the reason I'm a boy? That won't be the case once we smash it. Kushina replied, care to do the honors, Naru-chan? How? It's not like I have a hammer or anything on me. You remember that we're all in your mind, right? The blonde had the decency to look sheepish when it dawned on him and imagined a sledgehammer. This isn't gonna be painful, will it? Minato shrugged. Last time I heard of one breaking, there was a lot of cussing and some poor guy getting half his teeth knocked out. Of course, it had been used to try and con a guy into marrying someone that he thought was his fiancée. The worst you should feel is a bit of tensing. Naruto sighed, well, here goes nothing. He hefted the hand up and brought it down with everything he had, Databio. Wham! The tile shattered on impact, sending several fragments scattering around them. No sooner did it break, though, than Naruto gasped and went rigid, a blinding light engulfing him. Outside his mind, Naruto's body lay in a hospital bed, snoring quietly. No one else was in the room at the moment, so no one noticed the brief glow emanate from the back of his neck. Neither did anyone see his body start to shift and alter. Within seconds, the person everyone knew as Naruto Uzumaki was no more. Meanwhile, two elderly men, one finishing up a batch of paperwork, the other in a bar trying to flirt with a girl half his age, stopped in the middle of what they were doing and thought in unison. Why do I suddenly feel like I'm going to get chewed out soon? It took a moment for the light to fade enough for Minato and Kushina to see the result. When it did, they were greeted by an impressive sight. Like we said, your real name is Naruto Namikaze. Gone was the spiky-haired blonde boy. In his place now stood a girl who looked just like the reflection from the mirror, her currently loose reddish blonde hair falling down behind her back. The whisker marks on her cheeks were now thinner and the jumpsuit hung a little on her smaller frame. Wow, that was new, she said, only to clamp a hand over her mouth. Is that me? Her voice was now a little softer and obviously feminine. Hesitantly, she looked at her slender hands, eyes widening when they caught the jutting chest. She gave the SA squeeze an EEPD when she learned they were real. Phew, I needed that. One Anko Mitarashi sighed as she entered the hospital room of the boy she had grown to consider her little brother. Granted, if you asked someone who assumed to know the assistant of the T&I department, they claimed she was crazy, sadistic, and bloodthirsty. Most of which was true when she was working or some idiot decided that the mesh bodysuit she wore under a trenchcoat meant she was easy. She had ran into the blonde a few years ago when he was hiding out from a group of chunin he had pranked. At first she didn't think much about it until she saw just what he had done to them. Seeing 7 grown men running around painted purple and tied together by their underwear, complete with pants around their ankles, was pretty damn funny in her opinion. Before she knew it, the two were chatting about this and that. They met up a few more times and he quickly grew on her. Which is why she was going personal in dealing a certain someone who, though he'd get away with trying to crack the skull of someone she cared about, after he was taken out of the traction machine and released from the hospital, though. Thankfully, Hinata was kind enough to leave her something. She made a note to ask the girl how she got that pipe to fit up there sideways. However, who she saw on the bed was definitely not male. If it wasn't for the familiar whisker marks, she would have assumed she had gone to the wrong room. The hell? She quickly signaled for a passing nurse in the hallway, go and get the Hokage. Huh? Why? Just get him, damn it. She snapped, throwing a smidge of ki in to get the point across. As the woman ran off, she looked back at the sleeping girl, Naruto. What in Kami's name happened? Naruto, now Naruko, slumped onto a pillow, Kushina and Minato beside her. I really am a girl. But I've been a boy as long as I could remember. I don't even know how to act like one. If it's in consolation, honey, I was kinda clueless for a while too. Minato said with a rather embarrassed expression, though Kushina's was more of amusement. What are you talking about? You're a guy. Kushina had the grace to look sheepish this time. You see, Naru-chan. We succubi, we can't get pregnant from men. Come again. Well, we can eat food like everyone else, but we require male life energy to sustain ourselves properly. Nothing serious, I promise. She quickly added, noticing the rather appalled expression Naruko was starting to attain. We normally only need to feed about twice a week. Don't worry, they'd wake up after a few hours feeling fine. Of course, I fed exclusively from Minato-kun when we started dating. I slept pretty damn good too from that. Minato grinned, thankfully she'd do it after we had gone to bed. Anyway, because of that, we always have a bit of the residual energy in our systems, which would act as a natural and unfortunately, a permanent contraceptive. We can still have with a guy, we're just incapable of conception with them. But, if you can't, then how? Naruko's head tilted to the side in confusion. I'm getting to that. Now, we can't conceive with a man, but we can impregnate another woman. Say what? We succubi are futanari. Foot. Naruko's eyes widened as a heavy blush crossed her face. Holy shit. Language, young lady. Kushina scolded her. Now, as I was saying, Minato and I really wanted a child of our own. Adoption was plan B and there was no way in hell we were hiring a surrogate. So we resorted to an old and somewhat jutsu created prior to the Second Shinobi War. What kind of jutsu? Well, its creator was rumored to have a rather intense fondness for Yuri, to the point where he wanted to be a girl himself. He got his wish when he managed to develop a gender-bender jutsu. So, it made him look like a girl, like a hench? Minato turned bright red. No, it lived up to the name, he literally became a she, physically and biologically. He got away with it for years until he was caught using it, and got his ass beat from Lightning County to water and back again. Wait, are you saying? This time it was Kushina's turn to blush. It was definitely a new experience, especially since I had never had with another girl before, even if it was Minato. Fortunately, just because we can't get pregnant from a man doesn't mean succubi can't carry children. Once the egg was fertilized, we had it, or you, rather, transferred to my womb. The rest is history. Wow. Naruto mumbled once it had sunk in. That's new. Yeah, well, I guess we better go over what you're capable of. Kushina added, deciding to change the subject to something a little less awkward. Aside from the obvious flying, our tails are quite flexible. She punctuated it by using hers to pick up a nearby pillow and twirl it. We also have a natural resistance to genjutsu that strengthens as we get older. Right now, you won't have much trouble with low C rank ones, while D's won't even stick. Your grandmother was able to fight off a genjutsu the Uchiha had sole access to. One that was considered unbreakable, known as Tsukuyomi. The arrogant prick thought he could have a free night with her. Minato cackled. I would have paid a mint to see the look on the punk's face when she did that. Yeah, and to add insult to injury, she slapped him with our own natural version while he was busy being gobsmacked at her breaking it. We can expose our target to a UAL fantasy or nightmare. They might think they've broken it, but unless you let them out yourself, it'll just keep coming back full force. However, it has a price. In exchange for that aspect, we can't learn any other genjutsus. It's mostly a distraction, but it works pretty damn good in a fight if you can get your opponent off guard. Plus, she sent Minato a coy look. It's a hell of a lot of fun when you're feeling mischievous. Yeah. The fourth tugged his collar a bit, a hint of red creeping up his face. Cool, can I do anything else? Naruto asked, resisting the urge to cackle evilly at the thought of the pranks she could unleash with an ability like that. Kushina was about explaining something else, but Minato interrupted. Honey, I know you're enjoying this, but I think we better let her wake up. You can tell her everything else after she gets an explanation from those two. Yeah, guess you're right. She turned back to Naruto. One thing before you go, next time you see Jiraiya, kick him in the balls as hard as you can, okay? Just tell him it's for the tassels. He'll know. Hey, sure, Mom. I owe him a punt too for not telling me he was my godfather in the first place. She looked back at the still catatonic Kyuubi. What do we do about her? We'll be able to explain her afterwards as well. Right now, you need to get up, though. What's going on, Anko? The Hokage said as he finally arrived at the hospital. I had an Anbu come up saying you were almost freaking out at something. Hokage-sama, it's Naruto. He's, you better look for yourself. She said, almost pulling him into the room. Naru, too. Sarutobi trailed off when he saw the girl slowly sit upright. Ow, that hurt. She rubbed the back of her head. Aw shit, we forgot about that. He thought when she realized their presence, and he ended up getting an extremely unpleasant glare. Old man, where the hell is the perv? She snapped and pointed at him. The both of you have a shit ton of explaining to do. Even discovering one of his own students turning in an S-ranked traitor. And how the hell do you expect me to explain this to Hinata? However, getting verbally reamed by his surrogate daughter, probably wasn't in his plans. Oi, are you listening to me, old man? Didn't make it any less unpleasant, especially when he knew he deserved it for his goof up. Yes, Naruto. I heard you, and yes, Jiraiya and I messed up when he didn't take future ramifications into account. I had intended to tell you once you were old enough. Old enough. I'm just now finding out that the boy I lived as for my entire life never really existed. I've gotta learn to be a girl now. She yelled, still giving him the stink eye. Anko was nearby, still processing that she really had a little sister instead. Of course, that didn't keep her from comment, "She's got a point, you know." "That wasn't real smart, Hokage-sama." He sighed, "I know. It wasn't one of my better thought plans. Now that I'm finally considering what that could have done when you graduated. What in Kami's name possessed you to do it in the first place? What the council would have tried if they found out you were a succubus. A good few would have demanded you be turned into a weapon or personal slave, while others would have wanted to put you in a breeding program as soon as possible." "Like hell I will," she growled. "If those blowhards think I'm a damn piece of property, then they're more senile than I thought. That's the crux of the matter, Naruto. Once you graduate the academy, you'll fall under my jurisdiction and they'll have no say in the matter, but until then you're still technically a civilian. And like I said before, I'll be damned if I let them pull that kind of crap on you. Plus, Minato made a lot of enemies, namely in Iwa. I figured it was better to be safe than sorry in case they still wanted payback." That seemed to calm the copper-haired girl down a bit, though she still had some righteous indignation left. "I guess I can accept, but still, you could have told ME about this." "Unfortunately, I don't really have an acceptable excuse for that. I kept reminding myself that you should have been told, but every time I kept adding, how do you tell a boy that he's really a she? Like my sensei told me once while he had a hangover, even a cage can be dumb at times." In Jiraiya's case, however, I'm not going to try and defend him for not saying anything. "Well, I guess that'll work for now. One more thing, when were you gonna tell me I had the Kyuubi sealed?" Before she could finish, the window was opened in and the aforementioned sage leapt inside in what he thought was a dramatic style. "Never fear, Jiraiya is." The rest of his entry speech was drowned out by his shriek of pain when Naruto rushed over and delivered the hardest kick she could to his GN ads. "Think I heard one of them crunch." Anko and Sarutobi thought in unison, though in Anko's case, her thought was followed by laughter at the man's expression as he sank to the floor. "That was for never telling me I was really a girl, you jackass. Or for telling me you were my godfather." She followed up by punching him in the nose, then as soon as he reached up, she gave him another kick. "Mom asked me to tell you, that one was for the tassels." "You, Mom?" Anko cocked an eyebrow. While Jiraiya was busy whimpering on the floor, Naruto gave her and Sarutobi a quick rundown of what happened when she was out. "Holy shit." Anko blurted out at the revelation, "You're their kid?" "Holy shit. Yes, Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze are my parents, Anko." "Will you calm down? Gaki, your parents were considered two of the strongest shinobi in this whole damn town." "I know that, but right now I got other stuff to worry about. I think I need a drink after this." Sarutobi muttered, "So, fragments of Minato and Kushina's souls were pulled into the seal, and they told you everything." "Not yet, they said they'll tell me the rest later, but felt you both should know what bakas you were for this whole plan." "Right," he responded dryly, "those two are never going to let me live that down, are they? Which brings me to the next part of my irritation. Exactly when were you planning to tell me I have the Kyuubi sealed inside me?" Sarutobi sighed, "I had figured since the majority of the village aren't aware of you carrying it." Sorry. Sarutobi wondered if he heard that right. "Kyuubi's a girl. Dad said she's still under a genjutsu." Naruto's gaze shifted out of focus for a moment before she blinked. "Sorry, Dad just told me they noticed she had the same glassy expression when she attacked. Since they were pulled in, they can't touch her without the seal reacting, so they can't break her out of it." "A genjutsu? Who in the world would be capable of one strong enough to affect a biju?" Sarutobi thought, but decided to contemplate that later and returned to the subjects at hand. "You can communicate with them out here?" "Yeah," Naruto snickered, "and Mom wants me to let you know she still wants to, and I quote, put a boot up your wrinkled ass for giving her girl possible gender issues. Unquote. Right." His sweat dropped, as I was saying, since only a small handful of people know that she is sealed in you, and the few that are intent on punishing you for that day aren't really believed, I thought that you'd be able to go through life without having to worry about it. Naruto rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Fine, I can deal with that, but what do I do now? I can't just walk into class tomorrow and say, hey guys, guess what, my name's really Naruto and I just found out I'm a girl. Which is why I'm asking you to keep the disguise up in public, at least until you graduate. But that's 2 years from now. I know, but this will give you time to get accustomed to your real gender without the elders or certain individuals trying anything. And I'm sure Anko will be able to help you with some of the details. Sure, to be honest, I always wanted a lil sis. The older Kunoichi commented, though the slightly evil glint in her eye didn't go unnoticed by the Hokage. Kami, what have I unleashed? He thought before looking at his still crumpled student, Jiraiya. What did she mean by the tassels? The man simply whimpered. Thankfully, there were no severe effects from Naruto's attack, so she was allowed to leave, but not before Sarutobi told her to see him in the morning and Anko to get what she heard under wraps. For now he had placed a genjutsu on her until he and Jiraiya could fix up something a bit more substantial to last the 2 years. Talk about a hell of a combo. A girl, the daughter of two of Konoha's best, and what was that last one? Anko said, still processing everything while they made their way out. A succubus. She responded absently, wondering if she would be able to think like a girl at all, especially from the fact she still had feelings for a certain brunette. Picking up on her body language, Anko ruffled her currently spiked hair. Relax, Gaki. I'm sure she'll take it okay. If not, well, that's what worries me. Well, looks like you'll find out earlier than you planned. Naruto followed her pointing finger to a chair in the waiting room where Hinata lay curled up in it, joy. She deadpanned, stepping over to the sleeping girl. Hinata. She gently nudged her. Hinata. I'm gonna go and head home, give you two a little privacy. Anko whispered before leaving. A few more light nudges and the claw heiress stirred. Huat. She murmured and rubbed the sleep from her eyes, her waker finally coming into focus. Hey there, sleepyhead. Naruto grinned. Damn, she's cute when she wakes up like that. Naruto-kun, you're alright? Came the response before Hinata halfway tackled her in a hug. Yeah, just lucky my noggin's a lot thicker than that bum expected. She said, trying to hide the unease. Unfortunately, the other girl was quick to notice. Naruto-kun? What's wrong? Knowing she didn't really have much choice now, Naruto steeled herself. Hinata. There's something I need to tell you. Hinata gave her semi-boyfriend an exasperated look as they finally slowed down near one of the training grounds. For some reason, instead of telling her then, he dragged her out here. Okay. Naruto-kun, what the hell is with you? You're starting to weird me out. I just don't want anyone else to find out just now. Naruto quickly looked around to be sure they were alone. Before I say anything, I want you to promise you'll take this calmly and as rationally as possible, alright? I promise. Now will you just tell what this is all about? Hinata muttered. Okay. I found out something while I was in the hospital. You know how we all though the fourth and Kushina Uzumaki died defeating the Kyuubi? Yeah, they talk about it almost every year. Well, I found out two things. First was the Kyuubi is female. Hinata promptly did a double take. Wait, female? You serious? Hold on. What did you mean by is? That's the second thing. You know the mark on my stomach that we thought was a tattoo? They did stop her, but not the way everyone thinks. Wait. Are you saying what I think you are? The brunette glanced down. Yeah, they sealed her in me. Her eyes widened as she looked at the blonde's stomach. Holy shit. That's what I said. She's kinda catatonic right now, so I couldn't get anything out of her personally. You know, you're taking this rather well, Hinata. An eye roll was the response. Naruto, unlike those pinheads who think otherwise, I use my brain. Granted, you're pretty much a walking storage scroll, but it's still you. The blonde had the grace to look sheepish. Hey, yeah. Well, that brings me up to the next thing. She froze up for a second before resuming, though Hinata caught it. What was that? That's the second thing. When I found out about the Kyuubi, I found out my parents' names. Really? Well, spill it. Who were they? The same two that fought the fox. Naruto said simply. But that was. Her jaw dropped slightly when it hit her. Minato and Kukushina. They're your parents? Naruto nodded. Yep. A bit of themselves were sealed in as well. When I froze up just then I was asking them if it was all right to tell you. And mom asked me to let you know that if your hair was in pigtails, you'd be a mirror image of Hitomi. Really? Thanks, Mrs. Namikaze. Sama, I mean. She quickly added, trying to hide the grin at being told she looked like her late mother. So, you're Naruto Namikaze, huh? You do realize people are gonna start trying to kiss up when this gets out, right? That name was pretty big even before he was Hokage. I'll have to worry about that when they do find out. She rubbed the back of her neck. That kinda brings me to this. The Byakugan see-through genjutsus, right? Kinda, we can see when something's made of chakra. Why? This'll probably be more believable if you use it. Trust me. Fine. Hinata took a few steps back and activated her bloodline. It lasted a few seconds before she suddenly shut it off and rubbed her eyes. That can't be right. Hang on. She did again. I know it's you. I'd recognize your chakra network anywhere. But why the hell is it in a female outline? And why the hell is it showing you as just chakra? Yeah, that's the big thing. I didn't know until mom and dad let me know. My real name is Naruko. Naru. That's a girl's name. I know. The old man and the perv put a thing called a chameleon seal on me the day of the attack. Until an hour ago, I never even knew I was really a girl. What do you mean you didn't? I mean neither of them told me about the seal. Gigi told me he originally had Ero Sanin put it on me to keep some of the greedier council members from trying to set me up as a breeding machine or brainwashed solder. Especially considering that I'm apparently the last of my mom's clan now. The succubi. Succubus. Wait. I remember reading about them once. A lot of their abilities were mostly UAL in nature, but they could still hold their own in a fight. And that caused them to be hunted for soldiers or slaves. Yeah, he didn't trust the majority of the council enough to think some wouldn't try it. That, and he didn't know if he still had a grudge against my dad or if they decided I'd be owing the pound of flesh. Understandable when you put it like that. I just wish they would have let me know. Naruko muttered, now I got 2 years to get used to being a girl before the final exam at the academy. That and, well, us. What about us? Hinata, you know how I feel about you. There's no mistake in that, but even if I didn't know. She was silenced as the pale-eyed girl's hand gently gripped the sides of her head. I'll admit, it surprised me for a moment to find that out, but if you think that's gonna chase me off, then you need to lay off any paint fumes you've been sniffing. Naruto or Naruko, you're still the blonde I fell for 4 years ago. Hinata said, pulling her in for a long kiss. After they managed to get both Hook Swords and Minato's boot out, I made sure that the next time I ever got Kushina any clothing for a present, it would cover up a lot more than 10% of her. Jiraiya finished once he was coherent enough to answer Sarutobi's question from yesterday. Though he was still cradling an ice pack to his abused buddies. Your own fault, Jiraiya. The Hokage muttered as Naruko came in, along with Hinata and Anko. Ah, there you are. He looked to the other two. Anko, Hinata, what brings you here? Naruko-chan's already told me about it, Hokage-sama. Hinata replied, putting her arm around the other girl's waist, all of it. And it doesn't really make a difference. Naruko quickly shot a glare at her godfather who was twitching to his notebook. Don't even think about it, Ero-sanin, unless you want them to find out about Chapter 3. She warned. I was hoping you had forgot about that. He whined, putting it away. Sarutobi looked between them. Do I even want to know? It was the first time he saw me and Hinata together. I told him if we ever found out we were remotely put in one of his books, Yugo Izuki and Hana Inuzuka would learn he used them for the threesome scene in Icha Icha Paradise. She gave him another glare. I love the books, but it's his so-called research methods I can't tolerate. And he knows what I'll do to him if he tries it with me. Anko cracked her knuckles, making him pale slightly. Right. Anyway, Naruko, I've been going over possible methods to keep the disguise up for the next 2 years. It's obvious a genjutsu won't do. Yeah, I'm not too eager to go into class and having Sakura or some other nosy prick dispel it on me. Quite, and a henge just wouldn't be practical. So we've decided the best course of action is reusing the chameleon seal. What? Naruko yelled, you know damn well the trouble that thing's already given me. Naruko, calm down. I know, but Jiraiya's managed to modify it some. Sarutobi held up a small piece of paper. On it was an odd-looking drawing. In this form, the seal will only be effective while you're wearing it. You can remove and reapply it whenever you choose. This way you can get accustomed to your real gender while still keeping hidden until the exams. Naruko gave the slip of paper a wary look. I wish there was an easier way, Naruko. Unfortunately, this is the best we can do on such short notice. I know. Still feels weird, she replied as the Hokage dispelled the genjutsu and handed her the paper. Just put it on your skin anywhere. He said, it'll deactivate whenever you remove it. At least it's only 2 years. She said, sticking it onto her hip. Rise and shine, squirt. Anko hollered, less than 3 feet away from the sleeping Naruko. Aya, she shrieked, flailing wildly before falling off the bed. Anko. What the hell? She growled at the laughing Junin while trying to untangle herself from the sheets. Someone tell exactly why did I let her talk me into moving in with her? One of us had to get your butt out of that bed. She replied in between cackles, you don't want to be late for exam day, do you? That's today? Naruto glanced at her clock and swore, shit. I'm running late. I'll have to get you back for this later. Anko simply scoffed until she heard 8 words. I'm a naughty girl, Uruka-sama. Ring a bell? Naruto was quick to add, did you know you're a really loud squealer? Shut up. She yelped, trying her best to hide her heavy blush by leaving. Just hurry and leave me some hot water. And Anko Mitarashi does not squeal. The last part was just loud enough for Naruto to hear, the bedroom door closing behind her. Right. The blonde snickered as she headed to wash up. The 2 years had gone by relatively quick, especially when the snake welding kunoichi decided she wanted her now surrogate little sister living under the same roof. Of course, the woman was something of an influence on her, though not all of it could be considered acceptable by some standards, like inheriting the preference for sleeping. Though, considering the fact that she was rather proud of her figure due to her succubus side, the blame probably couldn't go fully to one side or the other. At least I don't have to waste time undressing to take a shower. Letting the warm water flow over her, she started sudsing up her washcloth when she felt 2 large, soft objects press against her back, followed by a pair of slender hands reached around her, both gently cradling a. Naruto couldn't help but roll her eyes. You do remember this is a one-person shower. She turned around to face a familiar, and equally, green-haired girl grinning at her. Right, Riku? Ah, but that makes it more fun. The greenette pulled her a little closer, squishing their S together. So who gets her back washed first? She finished with a cute little smile, combined with the dreaded, puppy dog eyes jutsu. Now I know where Hinata learned that. Naruto mumbled, fine, turn around. She couldn't help but grin when Riku turned around and gave her ass a little wiggle. She responded by giving her a light spank, earning a squeak and blush. Naruto chuckled as she started scrubbing. It had been almost 15 months since Riku, better known as the Kyuubi, was finally freed from her unexpected prison. The whole thing started off when her parents called her back in the room with some good and bad news. The bad? She should have been able to access her succubus abilities by now. The good? They had found out what the problem was. Apparently the presence of Minato, Kushina, and Riku in the seal was causing heavy interference and blocking Naruto from them. Their solution was relatively easy. Wake her up, then possibly find out what happened when she was put under before unlocking her. But like they said, the seal would start reacting whenever 2 of them got near her. Fortunately, a good pinch on the backside, courtesy of Naruto, was enough to get a yelp of pain and snap her out of it. However, the moment she was free of the genjutsu, Kyuubi began screaming and thrashing against her restraints, cursing out what someone called Madara made her do. It took Naruto several minutes, and holding on to her like crazy so she wouldn't possibly injure herself, before the green-haired girl calmed down to realize she wasn't under the illusion anymore. Flashback, sort of. Oh Cammy. All those people, the fire. The girl shuddered, tears starting to run down her face. Think I'm gonna be sick. Naruto held her close. Easy, you're all right now. She whispered, wiping the tears off her face. Maybe you better tell us just what happened. Who's this Madara guy and what did he do? Madara Uchiha. He's the son of a bitch that put me under that genjutsu and sent me to Konoha. Madara. Minato said, a mixture of shock and confusion on his face, but Hashirama Senju killed him. Bastard looked pretty alive when he used those damn eyes of his on me. However, he didn't know that a part of me was still aware of what was going on. I still remember feeling some of them crunch under my. She took on a green hue and buried her face in Naruto's shoulder. Well, at least we know she wasn't a willing accomplice. Kushina said, looking relieved, so that's one matter we can put behind us. That just leaves the matter of Naruto's succubi abilities. All 3 women could hear Minato mutter, she's gonna hate this. Naruto turned to the older blonde, gonna hate what, Dad? Now that we know Kyuubi. Riku. The green-haired girl mumbled from her position. Say what? Kyuubi's just the rank. My real name is Riku. Oh, right, sorry. Minato rubbed the back of his neck. Anyway, now that we know Riku was forced to attack, there's the matter of getting Naruto access to her powers. He sighed. This is where the "you're gonna hate" part comes in. You're going to have to unlock Riku to release your abilities. Why didn't you say so? Naruto immediately started looked for anything that looked like a lock or hook or anything. Yeah, though. MMF. Minato started before getting Kushina's elbow in the gut. Say what, Dad? I think you'll have to remove that plate on her chest, Naruto. Kushina called out. It took a little work, but Naruto was able to unhook the plate. As soon as she did, the shackles and chains fell away, letting her help Riku to her feet. Flashback end. However, that was when she learned exactly why Minato got elbowed. When Riku was freed, him and Kushina began fading away. Without her locked up, they would pass on. At first Naruto was angry that they didn't warn her about that until Kushina told her if they had said anything then she'd been forced to try and make a choice. She didn't want to admit it, but she knew that would have more than likely had happened. That didn't make it any easier to accept, though. She bit back her tears as her parents made sure they were proud of her, Kushina telling her there was something hidden in the headboard of the main bedroom at the Namikaze Manor, before disappearing for good. Lost in thought again? Riku's voice broke her from her thoughts, and judging from the tone, she was thoroughly enjoying herself. Naruto looked to find her current showermate had turned around and she had been scrubbing the older girl's ass for several seconds. You know you could have said something, Riku. Naruto raised an eye, the upturned corner of her mouth belying the attempt to sound annoyed. True, but you looked so cute with that far-off look on your face. Riku replied, taking the soap. Just don't expect it all the time. She replied, relaxing as the bar was run up between her own bust. You're late, Naruto. Iruka muttered, giving the blonde an exasperated glare as he hastily grabbed a seat. Blame my clock. Piece of junk didn't go off in time. Came the reply. Fine, fine. Fortunately for you, the bell only rang a couple of minutes ago. He turned to the papers in his hand. Now, as I was saying beforehand, today marks the final time some of you will attend this school and become full-fledged shinobi. He was quickly interrupted again when the door was shoved open, this time by a silver-haired chunin. He looked like he'd slept in the road and just now woke up. Mizuki? What the hell happened to you? I got jumped last night, again. The man snapped, woke up under a friggin' fruit cart. That's the 5th time. When the hell are they going to catch this annoying asshole? As the two instructors talked, Hinata leaned over to Naruto and whispered, 5th? She shrugged. He doesn't pay attention in town so he's an easy target and it's funny as hell to stick him in weird places. Besides, I've seen the sneers he shoots me when he thinks no one's looking, so I like to consider it payback. Hinata rolled her eyes. She knew her girlfriend had to drain energy from guys for sustenance, but unfortunately her pranking nature caused her to ambush them, then set most of her victims, especially the few that felt she was the Kyuubi, up to wake in odd and embarrassing places, like that guy she left in the women's side of the onsen. Poor bastard could be heard screaming all over Konoha when that group of Anbuku no Ichi got hold of him. Thankfully, it mostly just annoyed them to no end and everyone else chalked it up to an unknown pranker since nothing was stolen and no physical damage was detected. She was also grateful Naruto was forthcoming with how she had released Riku, who was pretty damn hot in Hinata's opinion when they finally met. It was no secret amongst the few, namely her and Anko, who knew that Riku had grown quite fond of the blonde over the year, but they also knew there was no way Naruto would go behind the pale-eyed girl's back. Of course, Hinata made it clear that her cherry got popped first, considering Riku told them she was, surprisingly, a virgin as well. Granted, she was able to take the surprise well. Sarutobi, on the other hand, nearly had a seizure when he met her and learned just who she was. It took smelling salts and 3 bottles of sake to calm him down enough to let them explain about the genjutsu. Riku had made it clear that while she enjoyed beating the shit out of people who deserved it, wanton and unnecessary slaughter turned her stomach. Hinata, huh? What? She snapped out of her musing. It's your turn. Naruto pointed to a now waiting Iruka. They've been calling out names for the last 5 minutes. Oh. Blushing brightly, she made her way to the testing room, returning a few minutes later sporting a brand new Konoha headband tied loosely around her neck. One by one the rest of the class went in until Naruto Uzumaki. Okay, that was the substitution and transformation jutsus. Iruka ticked off something on his clipboard. Now, show us a clone and we're done. Wah, that's it? Just showing the academy stuff? No matches? No obstacle course? Naruto said with a mildly slack-jawed expression. Well, due to certain restructuring, it was impossible not to see the flat-out hostility he had for whoever was responsible. Over the last couple of years, this is the best we can work with for now. Now go ahead and make a clone. She simply shrugged. Fine. Time to put that move Dad showed me to the test. Shadow Clone Jutsu. It took most of her self-control not to have a giggle fit when the two Chunins promptly fell off their chairs at the sight of three more blondes appearing shoulder to shoulder. This enough, Iruka-sensei? The quartet said in unison. Why yeah, Naruto. The scarred Chunin said, pulling himself back to his chair before noticing the blonde wasn't even winded from the jutsu. How'd you even learn that? Saw a guy perform it while training a while back. She said, deciding on a semi-truth for now. Well, normally you'd be gotten on to for trying a jutsu without considering the risks, but seeing as you appear to have a grasp on it, I think I can let that part slide. It was no secret in Konoha that Naruto had absurdly large chakra reserves. Unfortunately, neither of them spotted the scowl on Mizuki's face as the headband changed hands. I knew you'd pass, Naru-chan. Hinata chirped once their lips separated. Naruko rubbed the back of her head. Hey, was there any doubt? Now I can let Gigi know so I can stop wearing this stupid tag. She chuckled, wonder how they're all gonna react when the news comes out. Hinata stifled her own giggle. Well, while you do that, I'm going to get things set up for a little celebration I've been planning for when you and I finally graduated. She finished the sentence with a half-lidded leer. Oh? Naruko responded by wrapping her arms around the slightly shorter girl, pulling her close. Anyway, I can get a hint of what it is. Hinata simply grinned and wriggled her way out of her girlfriend's grip. You'll just have to wait and see. Meet me at the usual spot. She headed off, making sure Naruko saw the added sway in her hips as she left. That reminds me, we need to get a new clock. Riku's voice piped up from inside the blonde's head, causing her to jump slightly. Kya, damn it, Riku. You know you're supposed to give me some kinda warning when you go back in there. Naruko scolded the fox girl. Even though she was more or less free, the seal was still intact enough to keep her bound to Naruko. Riku still liked to pop back into the mindscape room when she wanted to get some privacy. I know, but I caught Jiraiya trying to peek in on me while I was changing out of my work clothes. Still kinda surprises me that you actually got a job at Ichiraku's willingly. Naruko replied before adding, you left him alive, right? Perv still owes me lessons on summoning some time. It's something to do, and the paycheck isn't too bad either. And yes, I just poured a bottle of feminine hair remover down his pants. The kind that starts burning if you leave it on too long? Yep. Naruko nearly fell over laughing. That is so wrong. Still funny as hell. Riku yawned. As long as I'm here, I'm gonna take a little nap. Let me know if anything happens. Think Gigi was happier to be giving these to me than I was getting them. Naruko chuckled as she stuffed the manor's house keys into her pocket. The old man had gone ahead and destroyed the sealed tag after she showed him her headband, giving her the okay to go out in her real identity, though he'd have to make it official to explain why the disguise. Thankfully, Jiraiya managed to dig up word that the Tsuchikage was preferring to forget the name Namikaze ever existed after the war. While a small number still fumed over it, the majority agreed with their cage. Naruko patted the pocket, hearing the keys jingle. Can't wait to show these to Hinata and Anko. With those words, she immediately made a beeline towards the small shack she and Hinata had been meeting at recently. It quickly became a favorite spot due to the privacy it gave, especially since it was the place they first saw Narc's succubus form. Poor Hinata nearly took out the wall her nosebleed had thrown her into after seeing it. Though that may have been cause she had to go topless so the wings wouldn't destroy her shirt. Entering the clearing, Naruko quickly caught the faint scent of cinnamon and lavender, indicating the other girl was, or had been in the area. Hinata, you here? Over here, Naru-chan. Her girlfriend's voice called out from inside the shack, an almost purring tone in it. The blonde turned in time to see a slender and very bare leg poke out from the doorway. Entering, Naruko was greeted by a sight she had never expected to see, but was quite glad she did. Leaning against the wall was Hinata. At first it seemed no different than usual until she looked down to see two slender and very bare legs sticking out. Hinata. Naruko's eyes widened even more as she sauntered up, slowly unzipping the coat. Surprise, Naru-chan. Hinata purred, letting the garment slip off, showing she was completely nude. I need sake, Iruka thought to himself when he finished listening to the female trio's tale. By then Anbu had already arrived and carted off Mizuki and the scroll. Okay. Let me get this straight. The boy named Naruko Uzumaki is in fact a girl named Naruko Namikaze, the daughter of Minato-sama and Kushina-sama, right? Yep, Hinata nodded. Lots of sake. But she didn't find that out until a year or so ago because the third had Jiraiya put a seal on her to hide it in order to protect her from the civilian council so they wouldn't find out that she's the last of her mother's clan. What was it again? The succubus. Naruko piped up. Maybe that new booze from Iron Country. Bourbon they called it. Succubus. Right. So they wouldn't find out and try to take control of her, except they both forgot to let her know beforehand. Both, definitely both. And Riku here. He gestured to the green-haired girl between them. Is actually the Kyuubi. The same fox that attacked Konoha 15 years ago. Except she was under an exceptionally strong genjutsu during it. And that the fourth sealed her into Naruko, though now she's been semi-freed after learning all that. Anything I missed? Not much. Aside from that these two are still an item. Mind you, I'm still waiting for my turn. She grinned in a perverted manner. Eki. Hinata lightly elbowed her. Riku simply grinned wider. In large quantities. He yelped to himself, pinching his nose as tight as he could when he realized what she was implying. Alright. Well, I guess we better let the Hokage know. Technically Riku did stop a trader from making off with a priceless item, so there's most likely a reward waiting for you. Cool, can I get it in yakitori? Just woke up a little while ago and I'm kinda hungry. When aren't you hungry when you wake up, Riku? Naruko snickered, only to squeak and blush as a hand squeezed her ass. True, but this time it's for food. Let's get going, Iruka hollered, whirling around to hide his reddening face. After explaining thing to the Hokage, giving him an "I told you so" considering the scroll's security, and signing a deed that finalized her official ownership of Namikaze home, the trio left his office with a rather pleasant chunk of change since stopping a traitor was considered an A- rank mission. Unfortunately, Hinata had to head home but not before giving Naruko an enthusiastic goodnight kiss that Riku was quick to turn into a three-way, but they didn't complain. About time you got back. Anko gave the duo an exasperated look as they entered the apartment. Well, stopping a traitor can take a few minutes, Riku said, waving the envelope full of cash. Mizuki tried to steal the forbidden scroll. Let's just say he won't be walking right or eating solid food for a while. Naruko added, Gigi's considering leaving him in your tender hands. Anko immediately brightened up. Really? Yes, I never didn't like that prick. Unable to resist, she quickly added, something tells me that's not the only reason you're late. Naruko simply grinned. Oh no you don't, Anko. Well, let's just say the Hyuga's fighting style has given Hinata-chan some very nimble fingers. She silently counted down until it clicked and the older Kunoichi did something she very rarely did. Blush. It was faint, but still visible. The snake-themed Kunoichi had a knack for flustering people with innuendo, but she wasn't used to having it turned back on her. And by the way, you might want to get up early. I mean why? Tomorrow's moving day. She held up the house keys. Anko raised an eyebrow. Moving day. Namikaze house ring a bell? Naruko chuckled as she gave the keys a quick jingle. Anko's eyes promptly doubled in size. Those that are. Yep, and before you say anything, I've already called dibs on the master bedroom. Wah, no fair. She half whined, but the look Naruko gave her made her back down reluctantly. Fine. But how do you plan to do it? Team assignments are the day after tomorrow and it'll be an all-day job just packing. You mean outside of sealing scrolls, that you taught her about I might add, and a few shadow clones? Riku deadpanned. Anko had the decency to promptly sweat drop and scratch her head sheepishly. Oh yeah, right. Early the next morning, anyone up then could see two figures walking down the main street of Konoha, a box tucked up under both their arms. While not as sprawling as the Uchiha or Hyuga compounds, the Namikaze building was spacious enough to house close to 24 people. Unfortunately, the majority of it was unused since neither Minato or Kushina had really planned on having a large family, mostly just using the kitchen and master bedroom, a room their daughter was currently curled up in. Naruto purred as she woke up from the first night in her new bed, the feel of the silk sheets against her body a more than welcome sensation. A girl could seriously get spoiled on stuff like this. Riku. She moaned softly, Riku. The green-haired girl cracked open an eye. As enjoyable as where your hand is, I've got to get up. Team assignments are today. Riku's eye trailed to what she was holding and had the decency to blush, wondered why that ball was so much fun. She promptly let go, albeit a tad reluctantly. Wait, aren't you supposed to be at the stand right about now? Day off, was all Naruto heard before Riku snuggled back under the covers, sound asleep once again. The blonde could only smirk as she climbed out of the large grand king-sized, four-poster bed, gently knocking her fist against the headboard. There was a soft click and the post slowly opened, revealing a 3.5-foot sword. Unsheathing it revealed a gleaming red blade, narrowing slightly halfway up before widening out to an arrow-shaped tip. A quick flick of the wrist caused the blade to immediately separate into inch-long sections, a length of wire connecting each of them. Her mother's whip sword, Ruby. According to Sarutobi, it was the weapon that earned her the nickname, the Bloody Princesses, due to her leaving several enemies nearly shredded by the weapon. At least now I can hopefully find someone who'll help me learn to use you, she said, using a light surge of chakra to retract the blade before setting it on the end table and heading to the shower. By now Anko had already gone into work herself, so hopefully there was something in the fridge. Hey, Shino, Choji mumbled through his first bag of chips of the day when he saw the stoic boy reach them. Choji, Shikamaru, Shino replied in his usual monotone. Still kinda hard to believe we're finally out of the academy. The heavy-set boy commented, any idea on who we might get as teammates? I'd just be glad if they aren't troublesome. Shikamaru deadpanned, but considering Hinata's the only girl in class who isn't nuts over Sasuke Uchiha, I'm not keeping my hopes up. Especially those two. He shuddered slightly. I agree. Haruno and Yamanaka's infatuation with Uchiha is somewhat less than tolerable. Shino replied, though, Uchiha's own attitude leaves much to be desired. Anyone you hope to have as a teammate? Choji asked. Shino simply gave the barest of shrugs. As long as they make the attempt to perform reasonably, I have no preferences. Guess that makes sense. What about you, Shika? Choji looked to his friend, stopping mid-name when he saw Shikamaru was no longer paying attention. In fact, his attention was focused rather intently to his left, jaw hanging and eyes wide as saucers. For a moment, Shino could have sworn he saw a brief hint of red emerging from the Nara's nostril. Shikamaru. Hey, what's with you? Choji nudged him before the two of them followed his gaze, and immediately joined him in his reaction. Cute, brick house, by the Commodores. Heading their way was what some might be tempted to call, incarnate. Waist-length reddish gold hair framing a heart-shaped face, bright blue eyes that seemed to crinkle slightly in amusement every so often and a pair of quite kissable-looking pink lips. Around her neck was a black choker with a familiar spiral clasp on it. She had on a small, black and orange midriff-bearing jacket, closed only at the zipper and revealing she had no shirt on, only the cup edges of a black lace bra that held the swell of the 34DS she was endowed with and giving them a good view of the cleavage that came with them. A toned stomach slowly drew their attention down lower to the orange miniskirt she had on, short enough to give a peek of the matching black thong under it with the hip strings peeking out above the waistband, along with a pair of long shapely legs. If it wasn't for the noticeable muscle tone she carried, as well as the Konoha headband tied around her left thigh and the sword hanging off her hip, they might have thought she was a civilian girl out to be a tease. She most definitely does not look troublesome. I do not remember seeing her anywhere. Huh? No. Down Mongo. Bad. Heel. Poor Choji could only whimper slightly. The three stared as the beauty walked up, though, once she was close enough, they quickly noticed three very familiar lines on both of her cheeks. Hey Choji, Shikamaru, Shino. She chirped, walking right by them. You guys better get a move on if you want to find out what teams we're all gonna be. They stood frozen for several seconds before something clicked. She knew our names. Shino's glasses almost fell off. Those marks. No, that's impossible. Shikamaru shook his head vigorously. Choji blinked. Did she say, teams we'll be on? All three looked in the direction she had went. Unfortunately she was already out of sight. The ensuing cloud of dust was rather impressive. Iruka resisted the desire to bang his head on the desk to drown out the voices of Sakura and Ino as they bickered over who got in the doorway first. My foot was a half-inch further, Ino pig. Wouldn't be surprised since they're almost as big as your forehead, Sakura. They're a hell of a lot smaller than. Get out of the friggin' doorway. Iruka wasn't really prepared for what happened next. Before Sakura could finish, both girls were bowled over and sent sprawling into a heap. Where they once stood was now Shino, Choji, and Shikamaru, who were now intently scanning the room for someone. See her anywhere? No, you think she might just be in a different room? Possibly, but since she knew our names, I cannot provide a complete answer. The girls scrambled to their feet and were about to lay into them when Iruka decided enough was enough. Shut the hell up and get your asses in those seats. Now, he sighed in relief at the 5 resulting whaps from different parts of the class. Alright, now that that's settled, let's be sure everyone's here. He leafed through a stack of papers when the door slid open again. Sorry, I'm late, Iruka-sensei. Had to stop by the restroom. A voice piped up. That's okay, just take a seat, nah. He looked over and around 65% of his brain ground to a halt. The rest of the class followed in a similar vein when the blonde entered the room. Nearly all the boys and a few of the girls were staring with more than one pair of eyes with hearts in them. The rest of the girls were glowering in jealousy. If you listened closely, you probably could have heard one misguided voice mutter, "That hussy better stay away from my Saskia-kun." Sweet Kami. Kiba squeaked, already starting to drool. Akamaru took a sniff and whined in confusion. The smell was definitely that of Naruto Uzumaki, but it was 100% female now. Shika. Choji almost throttled his friend when he grabbed him. It's her. She's in our class. How the heck did we never notice her? Overhearing the conversation, Naruko decided to nip it in the bud before people started trying to mine her for answers. She pulled back her hair to give everyone a good view of the marks on her cheeks. These look familiar. Shikamaru was the first to respond. Then, you really are. Bingo. You used to know as Naruto Uzumaki. You're looking at the real me, Naruko Namikaze. Wait. Did you say you're Naruto? Ino blurted out in disbelief. Was Naruto, Ino? A voice called up from the back. All heads turned to see the bulky jacket of Hinata. Naruto Uzumaki was just a disguise she wore until she had graduated. Hinata's right. Naruko and the Hokage explained it to me after I saw her drop the disguise a couple of days ago once she graduated. If that's the case, then why bother pretending to be a boy? Ino half demanded. Naruko jerked a thumb to the still drooling Kiba. That answer your question? She quickly made her way to the back and sat down beside Hinata. When she did, however, she spotted Sasuke glancing her way with what she could only guess was mild curiosity. That or he had a case of hemorrhoids that was flaring up, she wasn't too sure. Unfortunately, Sakura and Ino, who were sitting on either side of the boy, saw him look and were immediately shooting Naruko obvious glares. Joy. Fangirl jealousy. Better stop that before it gets irritating. Before she could react, Hinata found herself with a busty blonde planted firmly in her lap. Naruko. She squeaked, trying and failing to fight the urge to moan when Naruko wiggled her firm and nearly bare ass against her crotch, along with simultaneously cursing herself and thanking Kami for picking today to wear shorts. Miss me, babe? She purred before planting a searing kiss on the brunette's lips. For a split second, Hinata tensed slightly before purring herself and wrapping her arms around her girlfriend's waist, perhaps. She grinned, sliding a hand up across her girlfriend's stomach and slowly making its way up to her valley. Thunk, 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 thunk. The duo glanced around at the strange barrage of noise and noticed their moment of fun had earned quite a few reactions at the bright red faces and deer in headlights expression almost everyone in the class had, along with several of the girls, was any indication. At least 3 of them were out cold on the floor with bloody noses. Shikamaru was having to give Choji the Heimlich maneuver after he almost swallowed half his chip bag. At the desk in front of them, poor Shino was hunched over, as red-faced as everyone else. If you listened closely, you almost hear him mumbling, uni thoughts, uni thoughts, uni thoughts. Kiba had passed out, a lecture class smile on his face. Naruko, will you please get into your own seat? Iruka almost whined, a red mark on his forehead showing he'd just banged it on the desk. The girls pouted for a moment before Naruto slid off Hinata's lap into the seat beside her. Neither of them noticed a slightly twitchy Sasuke sending them a sidelong glacé before turning back to the front, or the red-faced and fuming Pinkette shooting them a glare. Once everyone had managed to recuperate somewhat, Iruka coughed to get their attention. Okay, as you're all aware, today is your official end as academy students and your start as genin of Konoha. After a 10-minute speech going on about how they should be proud to be selected and whatnot, Iruka started calling out the teams. Team 7 will consist of Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno. Q ear-splitting squeal of, take that Ino pig. True love conquers all. And Kiba Inuzuka. Q disgusted groan and yell of, ah crap, followed by a bark of agreement. Your sensei will be Kakashi Hitaki. Team 8, under Asuma Sarutobi, is Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, and Ino Yamanaka. Why am I getting teamed up with those two? Ino whined. Cause you're a troublesome blonde. Came the muttered response, getting a glare in return. Team 9 is still in circulation. And Team 10 will have Naruko Namikaze, Hinata Hyuga. Yes, the two girls laughed, hugging each other. And Shino Aburame. For a moment, the girls could have sworn they heard the normally stoic boy whimper slightly. Your sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi. And that is that. All I can say now is good luck, and your Junin instructors should all be here in a few minutes. With that, Iruka made his way out of the room. As soon as the door closed, Kiba was at Naruko and Hinata's table, giving the succubus what he thought was a suave grin, though he was rather blatantly staring at her ass. So, Naruko, once we're finished here, how about you and I go out for lunch? What he got in return was a deadpan glare. Kiba, ever since we met, you stated that you didn't want to be around me several times because you didn't like, and I quote, my weirdo stink. More often than not calling me an it in the process. Well, I didn't know you were a chick then, he said in his defense. And now that you know, you suddenly think I'd forget all that and go out with you? Hell no. Fine, I'm sorry. Now will you go? I said no, Kiba. Besides, I'm not into boys. Thinking he had her, Kiba quickly added, then it's your lucky day, 'cause I happen to be a man. No, you're an ass, Kiba. Now leave me alone. Come on, don't be like that. He reached down to take her arm. The moment he touched her, Naruko leveled a glare at the jacketed boy. Though, instead of their usual blue, her eyes had shifted to a rusty pink color. They seemed to glimmer when she made eye contact with Kiba, who froze for a few seconds then began to shake and tremble violently. Mom. The word passed his lips in a strained whimper. Right before letting loose with a blood-curdling scream, I'm not supposed to be seeing that. Could be heard halfway down the hall as the class was treated to Kiba attempt to bolt in terror and forget the window was closed. The resulting bang produced a now laid out Inuzuka, twitching and whimpering every so often. The class stared at the now sprawled out genin for a moment, then one by one, began looking at Naruko with a mix of alarm, confusion, and slight fear. Genjutsu I learned, was all she'd answer with, I'll let him out of it when the Junins get here. What did you make him see? Hinata whispered once the rest of the class went back to their own stuff. Dunno, my UAL nightmare, fantasy illusions use whatever's in their head. Though, considering he said, Mom, I think we might be better off not knowing. Hinata considered it for a moment before shuddering a little and leaning against her girlfriend to get rid of the possible images. Something was very off, it didn't even take a cage to tell that, and Sarutobi knew it. Ever since the group before him became full shinobi, he'd never seen the hesitant, embarrassed look on Kurenai Yuhi, the annoyed look his son, Asuma was giving her, nor Iruka's disgusted glare towards her. Even the other two individuals, Kakashi Hitaki and Might Guy, were surprised. Okay, could one of you tell us exactly what is going on? He asked, eager to get to the bottom of things. Indeed, Guy piped up, what has caused you two to exhibit such unyouthful hostility towards Kurenai-san? Because she did something really stupid during her team intro. Asuma muttered. This caused Sarutobi to raise an eyebrow in the kunoichi's direction. How stupid are we talking about? Let's say if the wrong people heard it, Iruka's reputation would have been mud. That response earned a quick narrowing of the old man's eyes. Explain. I was in the middle of getting to know my team some. You know, the old meet and greet, when a pissed Naruko comes up, takes me aside and asked for whatever info I could give her on Kurenai. All I said was. She stammered. We know what you said, Yuhi. Iruka growled. Naruto came to me for any info I might have had on you too, since you basically accused her of sleeping with me in exchange for that headband. No. That's not. Did you or did you not say, after you met your students, and I quote from Naruto. Let's see which of you earned those headbands while on your feet, unquote. But that's not the worst of it, is it? You had the gall to add, deliberately making it just loud enough for them to hear and looking right at Naruto when you said it, or on her back. Or did you just forget the fact that I've taught the particular bunch of students for the last 5 years? Ooh, not smart, Kurenai. Kakashi mumbled, facepalming slightly. Guy gave her a disappointed grimace, most unyouthful. Junin Yuhi, is this true? Sarutobi's icy tone cut through everyone like a blade. He did not appreciate his shinobi deliberately slandering fellow Konoha nin, especially this surrogate granddaughter. But she was dressed like she belonged in the Red Lamp District. Kurenai yelped, trying to justify her actions. Does the name Enko Mitarashi ring a bell? Iruka growled out. The room's only Kunoichi blanched at the name. The T&I department's second in command? Also Naruko's unofficial big sister. And my girlfriend. Do the math, Kurenai. The ensuing silence was palpable. At least until Kakashi piped up, you and Enko? He promptly gave a thumbs up when Iruka nodded. A couple of years now. Nice. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. Iruka looked at the red-eyed woman, who by now was paling even further as she realized the implications of her cheap shot to Naruto. Not only had she indirectly accused her and Iruka of sleeping with each other, but also Iruka of cheating on his girlfriend, a Kunoichi considered one of the scariest women in Konoha, with a girl she considered a sibling. I take it by your reaction you've finally realized the shit you stepped in. Iruka said, getting a small measure of satisfaction out of it. Be thankful Enko hasn't found out, or what I heard Naruto and her teammates did to you would be a godsend compared to her revenge. The paleness quickly replaced by an atomic blush of embarrassment when she recalled that. Oh, should I ask what they did? The Hokage asked, keeping his gaze on Kurenai. According to them, Kurenai had them meet up at Training Ground 25 and assigned them the task of attempting to capture her. The blush quickly spread to the remainder of her face, almost reaching her collarbone. She had waited for over an hour for any of them to make a move before going into the woods after them, thinking they had gotten themselves into trouble. She promptly cursed her biggest flaw. As long as she could remember, she'd been taught to be proud to be a Kunoichi, to show that they were just as strong as the male ninjas. She took that to heart. Unfortunately, she took it a little too much to heart. She quickly developed a dislike for anything that seemed to show Kunoichi, or women in general, in a less than positive light, giving her a rather prudish attitude towards intimacy. Of course, that caused her to make the mistake of trying to take away Kakashi's copy of Icha Icha Paradise after learning it was a pornographic novel. While she was still a chunin. After ending up with a bruised backside from being vigorously knocked onto it, she quickly made the decision to think a little more before reacting. That lasted until she saw the attire of one Naruto Namikaze. How else was she supposed to react? She was showing almost everything. She assumed the girl had flirted and flaunted her way to graduating and figured the test, plus a bit of embarrassment, would give her a much-deserved slice of humble pie. Cammy, was she ever wrong? After a short trek into the wood, she managed to catch faint moans and giggles coming from nearby and immediately followed the sound, only to catch what she thought was Naruto and Hinata in a rather compromising position. Flashback. Kurenai's eyes widened. Less than 15 feet from her, laying against a tree, were both of her supposed Kunoichi students. The duo were lip-locked with a steamy embrace with Hinata on her knees straddling Naruto. The shock slowly gave way to anger when she heard the dark-haired girl giggle and squeak out, "Naruto. You know I'm ticklish there." She didn't know what angered her more. The fact those two were doing something so unseemly, in a training area no less, or in her eyes scampered off during the most important test of their academy lives to make out. "What the hell do you two think you're doing?" she bellowed as she stormed into the area, her hands already coming together for a genjutsu to teach the both of them a lesson. Both, however, responded with a grin and said 4 words she doubted she'd ever forget. "Taking your ass down." As soon as those were uttered, a battle cry from above immediately grabbed her attention. Unfortunately for her, she looked up just in time to see a black mass descend on her, then darkness. She tried hard to suppress the worsening blush due to that. She had been woken, a tad painfully, mind you, by a hard swat to the rear, only to find her tied face first to a large tree, arms and legs wrapped around it. The Hinata and Naruto she had found turned out to just be two of the real Naruto's shadow clones. They revealed that a couple more clones had been sent prior to the test to get info on her and used that for a trap. And she fell for it. Didn't help the situation when Naruto got right in her face and said, "Not bad for a student who got her headband on her back, huh, sensei?" Hinata was quick to add her dislike for the uncalled-for jibe, joke, or whatever the hell Kurenai thought it was. Even Shino stated he had found the parting remark to somewhat snide and tasteless. She didn't know what was worse, the blow to her pride for being taken down so easily, knowing she had once again acted before considering the situation, or the embarrassment at the way they had her tied up. She knew she probably deserved it, but they could have at least untied her before leaving. It was a good 20 minutes before she could loosen the wire up enough to free her hand up to get a kunai. She was brought out of her thoughts by the Hokage. It was pretty obvious that he'd been told everything. "Anything to have to add, Kurenai?" Sarutobi asked in a very no-nonsense tone. "No, Hokage-sama," she responded, hesitantly looking up at him. "I see. Normally, a reprimand would be called for slandering a fellow leaf nin, whether it was direct or not. However, I'm willing to accept what your genin team did to you should count as more than enough punishment, would you agree?" Kurenai nodded faster than she ever had before. "However, you will apologize to them and Iruka for starting this in the first place. You have 24 hours to do this, all 4 at the same time, otherwise, the next 3 Torah missions will all be solos, and yours. Is this clear, Crystal?" She half squeaked, her nodding picking speed.